Okay, so I guess it's been a while since I've made a video, and now I guess I'm just making a quick explanation video, which by the title you can tell what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm LS swapping the Mustang. This is kind of funny, a little unexpected, and I'm sure this is gonna get Chappie may not even agree with my decision to LS swap it, but I guess I'll go into why I'm doing it. Really, it has to do with I want to go racing a lot, and the parts are cheap to do it. I did consider Coyote swapping it really heavily. I guess I'm just going to go over the basics of everything on first why I'm choosing the LS, and then I'll explain why I got rid of all my 3.7 stuff. So the first one was cost. I actually was able to get a really good deal on a lot of the Holly stuff. And so like the intake manifold, turbo header manifolds, the actual like all the flanges, stuff like that. I also got a Dominator standalone ECU. And so that's actually in my room. I would have shown you guys in the video, but that's in my room. And then I just wanted to do something different. And I feel like if I would have Coyote swapped the Mustang, it would have been like no different. And then the question I would always get is, why didn't you just sell the V6 and get a Coyote? Why'd you bother even swapping it? You spent more money on that. Versus the LS, now it's just, why did you LS swap the car? That's sacrilegious. So but yeah, really the cost thing is what it is. Like the actual engine blocks for an LS are much cheaper. If I wanted to get a Gen 2 Coyote block, you know, like the 2015 to 2017s, I mean, those are pretty expensive for the long block. Then the ECU's maybe 50 bucks, the wire harness maybe like 100 bucks, but then you have to get like a power pack. And it's just, it would be like a bolt-in swap, but it wasn't going to be cheap. And the other thing is I wouldn't have been able to sell everything out of this. You know, for the transmission, I would have kept the 6R80 and I would have kept the internals out of that 6R80. So I wouldn't have been able to sell the built transmission I had. I would have to keep the torque converter, and then all the little stuff like the end gauge and my boost controller, all that stuff I would have had to keep, versus I was able to sell it, and that's going to go into the money towards the LS swap. Like the standalone ECU I'm going with can do all those things. I mean, it can do the two-step boost control, boost by gear, all these different things that it can do. For now, I'm just doing a 5.3 with like 243 heads. And that's just going to be to get the car done. All my stuff's gone. But that's just going to be to get the car done. And once it's like all dialed in and everything, then I'll probably just get a 6.0 block and then do a cookie cutter build. But this is just a 5.3 I have, you know, it's not anything special. It's just a truck motor. Quite a few miles on it and everything. But yeah, the other thing I got that just came in for it is the actual turbo, which is pretty cool because it's gigantic. But let me go ahead and I guess show you all the turbo I got. So I got it from VS Racing. Chappie likes it. Do you like the turbo? Do you agree with my decision? So I got this from VS Racing. I think it's .net or .com. The Sloppy Mechanics guys, they all recommend VS Racing. It's a billet wheel. I think it's the 80mm compressor wheel. I think the exhaust is like 88 and 96. And then the actual exhaust housing, I think was 1.32 AR or something like that. So I guess it's really just the simple specs. It is a T6 flange. And yeah. Let me go into, I guess, the second reason, another reason why I'm doing the LS swap over a Coyote would be, like I said, it's easier to work on. Now that has several things. The actual motor itself, or engine itself, is easier to work on. A pushrod engine is. I've worked on both. You know, the V6 was a mod motor, it had the overhead cams, and it wasn't that big of a pain to work on, but I think if you had to do like changing a timing set in car, it's probably not as easy as everything I've done with 3.7s in the engine has been out of car. But I've pulled off the heads off my truck, and I mean, it's super simple. You know, you just pick everything up and then you just throw it in a bin, or you just organize it however you want, and then you take the head bolts out and it comes right out. Versus overhead cam motors, you know, you have to take the timing gears off, You have to take the timing chains off, and then you can remove the cams, and then you can remove the heads. So that just wasn't, and that just wasn't really what I wanted to go with in a build. I know like the fact that I probably wouldn't be having to take heads off that often on a mod motor, but just the ease of working on cars is what I really like. And then the other thing has to do with the LS is actually physically much smaller. And I've worked on a few Coyote cars before. You know, I've worked on Chris's car. I've helped Daniel change out a clutch on a Boss 302, and it's just they're really big motors. Coyotes are just physically big, and in an S197. There's not really that much room. Like if you want to remove the headers, and let's say you don't have a really good header brand kit, you typically have to remove the K-member just to get to all the header bolts easily. Versus an LS, it's going to be more compact, and I'll be able to get more tools or whatever I need in there. So, I mean, I think the V6 engine was probably about as wide as a 5.3 or as wide as any LSX engine block. But there's still a lot of room with the 3.7, and that's kind of what I want to keep, is something that's just easy to maintain and work on. So that goes into like the ease of it. And then the other thing, I guess the availability of parts. There is a lot of stuff out there for mod motors nowadays. You know, even the 6R80, the actual transmission, that like the stock one, they're making like even new gear sets for it and everything like that. But the parts are still more expensive and less available. A lot of that stuff is not off the shelf, or if it is, it's still like maybe 50% more than like an equivalent LS part. Having parts available, going out and racing, and you know, if I like break something, it's like, hey, you know what? There's this guy in Houston down by Pasadena where I can just go get another set of heads or another set of something really readily available. The Coyote parts are getting there as far as how available they are, but it's not on the same page, like anywhere near as close. You know, it's just because all that LS stuff's been around for almost 20 years now, that a lot of stuff's available for them. So, and that's I guess the reasons on why I'm LS swapping. And I guess I'll go into the reasons on why I got rid of all my V6 stuff now. I actually got rid of everything related to the V6 drivetrain. And the reason I did that was I did what I wanted to do with that drivetrain. You know, I really wanted to run a 9, and then also I became the first, you know, 3.7 Mustang in the world to run a 9-second pass in the quarter mile. So that was a big achievement, and that's what I wanted to do. Some people were asking why I didn't keep it, why I didn't just try to get a better time, and it's like, yeah, well, what, you know, I ran a 988. I could have ran like maybe a 9.6, 9.5 if I was lucky, but that 988 pass was a really good pass. The 60 foot could have been a little better, but I mean, the DA was negative 1500, and I just don't see, I mean, maybe if I waited till next year, maybe like this semester, in the very early stages of the semester, that I could get weather like that again. But I just don't see getting much more of an improvement without spending a lot more money in the car. Specifically, like that turbo kit, I mean, it made 700 horsepower plus, and it got me into the 9s. But the turbo itself was actually kind of losing efficiency because it wasn't big enough. And then I would have had to sell that turbo, get another turbo. I could have kept the kit, but I would have to run a bigger turbo or a bigger exhaust housing or something like that. Spend money on that. The other thing is the factory intake manifold wasn't flowing evenly, and like if you've seen a Cyclone manifold, the way that one side kind of it looks like an actual Cyclone, but it's uneven. Like the air comes here and then turns and then splits into both sides of the engine, and that's fine, like up to like 500, 600 horsepower. But when you start getting above that, the air actually isn't equal. And so when you're tuning, you have to add way more fuel to accommodate that. So one side of the engine's running really rich, and then the other side's actually running at a good air fuel ratio, and you're losing power by that. So if I wanted to make more power, I would have had to make or get a intake manifold made, and to do a one that's good and made well, that would have cost like $3,000 really, maybe even more. And I'm talking good. I'm not talking like just like, oh, I ordered some sheet metal and then we had a guy TIG weld some aluminum together. I'm talking about like actually design and make something that would be even better than the factory intake manifold, but even better all the way up to like higher horsepower levels. And I didn't want to spend, you know, $3,000 and another $1,500 for a turbo. And then also, I think that fuel system was maybe rated for 800 to 900 on the 85. So then I would have had to get a different fuel system if I wanted to push to the 1,000 horsepower mark. As well as the engine itself was a just pistons and rods. It didn't have, it wasn't a sleeve block, so it had factory sleeves. So then I would have to get a sleeve block, which would be another $2,200. But I'd have to get that block remachined, so I'd have to get a hone, and I'd also have to get a main line hone, and then I'd have to transfer all that stuff from that engine to the other. So I would do the assembly myself, but then that's just all this work. So we're talking, if I wanted to actually go faster, like not just try to go faster with the current setup, but actually like step it up a level with that, I probably would have had to spend another $6,000 to $8,000. And you know, I'm getting all this done for what the LS swap way less, and it's probably going to be faster once I build a 6.0 iron block. And I mean, it's definitely going to go faster. And I just didn't really want to spend $6,000 to $8,000, as well as being the forefront on what is going to be the next thing that could fail in that engine. Nobody knows when the timing gears fail at. No one knows when the timing chains fail at. They don't make any. Like, you'd have to get those custom made if it failed. But if it failed, you know, it could have, you know, a valve and a piston could hit each other, and then boom, your block's grenaded because metal went all through it. It's just, there's so many little things like that in that drivetrain when you're pushing, when you're the one going the fastest with your setup. There's so many things that can just go wrong, and I just really didn't want to invest $6,000 to $8,000 to have that really big risk of having something fail. Versus the Coyote or LS swap, like, there's a lot more available out there. I don't have to actually, you know, test and try things and just experiment. I can just look online, like, you know, sloppymechanics.net, and see like, oh, here's this guy's build page. I can literally follow everything he did and then get somewhere near in the same ballpark of what he did with his build. So that's really what it comes down to. So I just didn't feel like I was gonna be much happier. So other than that, I guess I'll explain what I'm doing. What I just said LS swap, but as far as like what's basically what I'm doing, I have a Holley Dominator ECU, so I'm going to do a standalone. I will do a TH400, built one later on. I might throw a 4L80 in it just for now, and like do like the HD2 kit for that 4L80 to push like 600 horsepower so I could drive the car, just have something cheap. Because it does control a transmission, that standalone can do it as well. It's going to have just 243 heads, that big turbo over there, and then a Holley high-rise intake manifold, and then the Holley exhaust manifolds for a turbo kit, and then I'm making everything else myself. I have the cold side piping coming in, and I'm just going to get a bead roller, cut it up, and so it should be pretty cool to kind of show you guys how I'm making my own turbo kit. Obviously, I'm not manufacturing the manifolds. They're cast manifolds from Holley, but I am making everything else. So that'll be cool. The other thing, I guess, with the fuel system, I'm going to be doing just a fuel cell on the back, a 5-gallon fuel cell with an inline pump. And I guess I just have a lot more content to show because so much stuff's going to be coming in, and I can make and film videos and show you guys like how I'm going with the LS swap. So I will have to get engine brackets made, but that won't be too expensive. I don't think it'll cost much, and it's worth the money to just make them myself and know where I'm going to position the engine. That's about it. I mean, if you guys have any questions on anything, feel free to ask. I'm sure this video is going to have quite a bit of hate. Either people with the V6 is mad I'm getting rid of the V6, I got rid of my V6, or the people who are going to say it's sacrilegious for me to get rid of the a Ford engine, and they're going to be like, why didn't you just throw another Ford in it, Josh? But I'm still excited with the build. You know, if I had the money, I would Coyote swap, but I'm as YOLO douchebag, and this is a little crude, but Alejandro Flores says it, if you want an LS swap, you know, just go broke dick racing and do it. I understand. So this is really what it's about. Is I don't have that much money at my disposal. I know it looks like I have a lot, but you know, I rent a room out of this house. This isn't like my shop, my garage. I don't own all this stuff, and all my stuff that I get is used and has been acquired over, you know, years. It's not something that I just, over 6 months I was able to buy all this stuff, you know, like the turbo kit and everything like that. One reason why last fall I never had the Mustang running was when I blew up the transmission. I couldn't afford to fix it because I was in school. It took me a whole semester to save up $700 to buy that transmission. So this process takes a while. It's not something where I just have all the money to blow on everything, as much as I'd love to do it, because this stuff's fun. So if you guys have any questions, again, just let me know. I'll be posting more stuff as stuff comes in. The car, I'm thinking this is going to be like a year plus long build. It's not going to be anything quick. That mainly has to do with money, and then the other thing has to do with time. This semester I'm not going to have a crazy amount of time, but I think every other weekend I'll maybe have some time to spend, maybe 4 or 5 hours on the Mustang, and hopefully make a video about what I'm doing, whether it's like just welding some parts for the turbo kit, or making a cold side, like fabricating, or if it's like, hey, the engine's in the car, the Holly stuff came in. So yeah, well, that's the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know what you think about me LS swapping. All right, guys, I'll see ya.